The unsettling truth behind the abandoned asylum. Spring City, Pennsylvania, 30 miles from Philadelphia. Hidden among rolling hills and dense forest, something waits. The locals don't talk about it much, not anymore, but they remember. They remember the screams that once echoed from these buildings, the small faces pressed against barred windows, the children who entered and never left. This is Pennhurst State School and Hospital. From 1908 to 1987, more than 10,000 souls passed through these gates. Most of them were children. Many of them died here. Some say they never truly left. November 23, 1908. The Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic opened its doors with a promise: to care for society's most vulnerable. The campus sprawled across 1,400 acres. It was designed as a self-contained village, its own power plant, farms, bakery, connected by underground tunnels and tree-lined walkways. On the surface, it looked like a sanctuary. But within 4 years, Pennhurst was already overcrowded. The institution, built to house 1,500 residents, held nearly 3,000 by 1912, and they kept coming. Not just children with disabilities, immigrants who couldn't speak English, orphans with nowhere to go, women deemed morally corrupt for having children out of wedlock, anyone society wanted to forget. Let me tell you about a woman named Eleanor. In 1946, Eleanor was 23 years old. She had what doctors called rebellious tendencies. She questioned authority, refused to conform to her family's expectations. Her diagnosis? Hysteria. Her family committed her to Pennhurst. They told her it would help her. She would go for a few months, get the treatment she needed, and come home. Eleanor never came home. The wards at Pennhurst were hell on earth. 50, 60 people crammed into rooms meant for 20. Patients, children and adults alike, were left naked, sitting in their own waste. The smell was unbearable. Flies swarmed the windows, coating the flypaper in thick, writhing masses. There were only 8 doctors for nearly 3,000 high-need patients. The staff couldn't keep up. Many didn't try. Eleanor spent 17 years at Pennhurst. According to her file, she underwent electroshock therapy 43 times. She was placed in solitary confinement on multiple occasions, days in darkness, strapped to a bed with no food or water beyond what minimal sustenance kept her alive. The last entry in her file is dated March 1963. Patient deceased. Cause: pneumonia. Eleanor was 40 years old. Her family never claimed her body. She was buried in the Pennhurst Cemetery, one of hundreds marked only with a number. But Eleanor's story wasn't unique. It was the norm. In July 1968, NBC Philadelphia aired a 5-part exposé called "Suffer the Little Children." Reporter Bill Baldini gained unprecedented access inside Pennhurst's walls. What he captured on film shocked the nation. Children rocking back and forth in agony, barely clothed, tied to beds, hands forming fists against their restraints. The camera captured everything: the filth, the overcrowding, the vacant stares of people who had given up hope. We have seen the sights and sounds of Pennhurst in their most brutal and constructive forms. One story haunted investigators more than any other. 9-year-old Robert Height. His parents were told Pennhurst was the best place for their son, who had developmental delays.
They believed they were doing the right thing. The expose led to lawsuits, congressional hearings, criminal investigations. In 1983, 9 employees were indicted for patient abuse. But by then, thousands had already suffered. Thousands had already died. On December 9, 1987, Pennhurst's doors finally closed. The buildings were abandoned, left to decay. Nature began reclaiming what humanity had defiled. But something else remained. For 20 years, Pennhurst sat empty. Urban explorers began sneaking past the fences, documenting the decay. And they reported things. Shadows moving where no one stood, voices echoing through empty hallways, the sound of children laughing in buildings that held only darkness. In October 2019, A&E premiered World's Biggest Ghost Hunt, Pennhurst Asylum, the longest continuously filmed paranormal investigation in television history. 5 investigators locked themselves inside for 2 full weeks. What they captured defied explanation. Investigators reported extreme EMF spikes with no electrical source, temperature drops of 20 degrees in seconds, equipment batteries draining instantly, fresh batteries, fully charged, dead in minutes. One investigator, Zach Hano, an electrical engineer by trade, stated he'd never experienced so many technical failures in his career. Cameras shutting off, recorders malfunctioning, as if something didn't want to be documented. But the most disturbing reports came from the Mayflower building. Urban explorers and paranormal investigators consistently report the same phenomena here. The sound of metal gurneys rolling down empty hallways, wheels squeaking, getting closer. When they investigate, nothing. Empty halls, undisturbed dust. Visitors report overwhelming feelings of dread, sudden crushing sadness, anxiety attacks from people with no history of anxiety, as if the building itself remembers the suffering it contains and forces others to feel it too. The most documented entity is in the Quaker building. Witnesses describe a hunched figure with elongated arms that dangle past its knees. It appears in doorways, in reflections, in photographs where nothing should be. Psychics who've walked the grounds report multiple presences, dozens, maybe hundreds. Spirits of children, confused, looking for parents who never returned for them. Adults, angry at their imprisonment, their abuse, their forgotten deaths. And perhaps most heartbreaking, the spirit of a young girl named Lily. Multiple mediums have made contact with her. She's been described as 5 or 6 years old. She died at Pennhurst in the 1930s, shortly after being admitted. Lily appears to visitors in the Devon building. She's been photographed, a small figure in a white dress. Investigators have captured EVPs of her voice asking, "Where's my mommy?" Whether you believe in ghosts or not, one thing is certain. Something lingers at Pennhurst. The question is whether it's supernatural or simply the weight of collective trauma embedded so deeply in stone and wood that it can never truly be erased.
In the medical wing, an operating table remains. Surgical lights hang overhead, shattered. This is where electroshock therapy was administered, where ice bath treatments left patients hypothermic, where lobotomies were performed on those deemed too difficult to manage. The walls tell their own stories. Paint peels away in sheets, revealing layer upon layer, decades of institutional green, institutional white, institutional gray, the colors chosen specifically to be clinical, sterile, devoid of warmth. Over the years, vandals and urban explorers have left their marks, but some of the graffiti is older. Messages scratched into walls by people who lived here. People who needed the world to know they existed. We were people too. In its early years, Pennhurst tried to project normalcy. Archival photographs show residents working in the bakery, tending the gardens, posed in neat rows for official portraits. But look closer. Look at their eyes. Look at their postures. These weren't willing participants. These were prisoners, forced into labor to keep the institution running. Today, those same bakeries are tombs of rusted equipment. The gardens are wild, overgrown forests. The neat buildings are collapsing shells. But perhaps most haunting are the tunnels. 500 feet of underground passages connected the buildings. Staff used them to transport patients in secret, away from public view. But they also served another purpose. This is where they brought the bodies. When patients died from neglect, abuse, disease, or simply despair, their bodies were moved through these tunnels to the on-site morgue. From there, they were buried in the Pennhurst Cemetery, often in unmarked graves. Over 1,700 deaths were documented at Pennhurst during its operation. How many more went unreported? How many bodies rest in unmarked plots, their names forgotten, their families never notified? The physical decay of Pennhurst is a mirror, a reflection of the institutional decay that allowed this place to exist for nearly 80 years. Buildings crumble, paint peels, rust consumes metal, but the memories don't decay. The suffering doesn't crumble. It remains, encoded in every brick, every beam, every shadow. Today, parts of Pennhurst operate as a controversial haunted attraction. Actors in makeup chase paying customers through the administration building past props designed to shock and terrify. Critics argue this is deeply disrespectful, that it trivializes real suffering, turns tragedy into entertainment, that it stigmatizes mental illness and disability. Pennhurst Memorial and Preservation Alliance fights to preserve the site as a memorial, a place of education and remembrance. They believe we have an obligation to remember what happened here, not to profit from it, but to learn from it. Because Pennhurst didn't happen in the distant past, it closed in 1987. Some of the people who lived there are still alive today. Some of the staff members who worked there still walk among us. This isn't ancient history. This is living memory. The question we must ask ourselves is what turned this place into a chamber of horrors?